Welcome back. The alleged involvement of 3 sitting judges of the Karnataka High Court in a sex scandal in Mysore has been dominating the headlines in the state. No evidence has been produced yet, but the Chief Justice has set up a committee to probe the scandal. The members of that committee met the Chief Justice in New Delhi today to work out all the modalities of the inquiry. However, in Karnataka, tension between some lawyers and the media appears to be building.
At the best of times, reporting a story on a judicial scandal is a difficult business. Now reporters who went to cover a meeting of the Karnataka Advocates Association on the subject got more than they bargained for. They say they were roughed up by the advocates. The scuffle is an indication of tensions between the media and the legal community over a story that has made headlines in Karnataka. The alleged involvement in a sex scandal of 3 High Court judges reportedly found in a Mysore hotel with 3 women.
The press persons who were on the duty at High Court, they never entered that venue. They were patiently waiting outside to hear, to know the outcome. And without any provocation, all of a sudden a group of advocates who were supposed to be guide the people on the matters of law, they talked of the law into their hands and go to the extent of physical assault. This has stunned us.
Journalists lodged a police complaint, submitted a memorandum addressed to the Chief Justice and are planning a protest march over the issue. But the Advocates Association president, who says there is no real evidence against the judges, regrets the altercation between the advocates and the journalists.
Caesar's wife must be above the suspicion. And judges, see now credibility of the judiciary is now lost. 4 or 5 members, they spoke also openly. The press is too much, and all that they said. Later on, I felt so bad about that, this press attack and all that. I am very sorry for that.
An advocate has filed a contempt case in the High Court against the way some of the newspapers reported the alleged scandal. Speculation continues in Karnataka, and it will be a while before the public knows the true facts of the case. Maya Sharma, Star News.
Well, joining us now in the studio on the entire question of who will judge the judges and reporting on such judicial scandals, we're joined from Bangalore by Mr. H.S. Balram. He's the editor of the Times of India in Bangalore, and he joins us from that city. Thank you so much, sir. And also joining us here in the studio, Dr. Abhishek Singhvi, a well-known legal face in the Supreme Court, and also Manoj Mehta, who's been reporting on the judiciary for the Indian Express for many years. Thank you all so much for joining us. Mr. Balram, if I can begin by asking you, give us some idea, sir, of the difficulties that you are facing, particularly the media based in Bangalore, on this particular scandal.
It's a very tricky situation. Everyone seems to know everything, but nobody wants to come on record. So that has put the media into a very difficult and rather awkward situation. The main source of information for us were the police. They hinted us, they alerted us on this. But whenever we deal with the judiciary, we are very restrained. Media holds judiciary in high esteem. But when there are some black sheep, it is media's responsibility to expose them.
Right. Mr. Balram, but if I could just ask you, you're saying that everyone knows everything but no one's coming on record. By and large, is the press in Karnataka actually reporting all the details or alleged or otherwise of this entire case, or is by and large the press being very restrained on this issue?
The press has been very restrained, but not too restrained for that matter.
Okay.
It has been trying to get.
Right. Abhishek Singhvi, this is a question which has come up in a number of instances as well, where there are allegations of judicial impropriety. Does it also raise questions of how such instances should be investigated, not just by the media but by the judiciary itself?
Oh yes, it does. It's a very vexed issue, and I must take you back a little bit in history, because from independence till about the early 90s, we had this system of executive primacy, that is the executive appoints. And it wasn't too bad a system, except that in the late 80s and 90s, it started having distortions. And then we changed by virtue of 2 Supreme Court judgments into judicial primacy. Incidentally, we are perhaps the only country in the world which has that exclusive power in the judicial fold.
Right.
And there were murmurs of protest that the judiciary has taken on too much on itself. But things would have remained as it is but for these incidents coming up now, and these incidents have heightened the demand for a Judicial Appointments Commission, which will originally started off with the appointments process, but today I think the institution and creation of such a commission will be hastened, not so much for appointments and transfer, but for disciplinary action.
Because you've got a case here where the Chief Justice has appointed a committee to investigate whether these judges were involved in the scandal or not. Is there any guarantee that the committee will act objectively against, in a way, its own fraternity?
Well, the best the Chief Justice could do in the circumstances is this, and there is no reason to suppose there are eminent senior judges involved in the committee as well, and I'm sure they will try to do the best. But it exposes the weaknesses of the system because the committee has no constitutional power, it has no statutory power.
Right.
Tomorrow if the three accused, in inverted commas accused, were to say, to hell with you, I'm a judge of the High Court, I will go and sit in the court, the committee could do precious little, even the Chief Justice could do precious little. So the Appointments Commission may be the only way out.
Longer term solution.
Yes.
Mr. Mehta, if I could just come to you, we were talking about executive primacy or the judicial primacy. By and large, the press doesn't really pull too many punches when it comes to attacking the executive, but when you're writing about the judiciary, are you always a lot more careful, concerns about contempt of court, all sorts of other issues? Do you think by and large the press is far more restrained and has to be far more restrained when talking about the judiciary?
Well, what you said about the press in general is true, and that's largely because of ignorance, largely because of unfamiliarity. They are cloaked with this power of contempt of court, so that deters the press. But as a journalist who has been tracking judicial developments for a long time, I can tell you that I have never felt encumbered by this law. I was very clear in my mind that so long as I get my facts right, so long as I do not attribute motives to a judge, there's no way I can in any case say that he delivered such and such an order because of such and such reason. Instead, I take a good close look at the judgment, point out the contradictions, point out what is dishonest about it, point out what is harmful about it, and leave it at that.
And none of that leaves him open to contempt of court?
Yeah, I mean, I know, never have I been called up for contempt.
Comment would not lead to contempt normally. And I think it's a cliche.
But this is a tricky one, isn't it, Abhishek? I mean, this isn't so much a case of a judgment which perhaps didn't quite read right. This is a case where we're talking about a sex scandal involving the judiciary. I mean, these are two very sensitive areas as it is. And perhaps we can go back to Mr. Balram on that. Is that one of the reasons, given the fact that this seems to involve, in a sense, relations which weren't exactly above board, is that making it all the more difficult, Mr. Balram, for the media to report on this in Bangalore?
Yes, it becomes difficult for us. It becomes difficult for us. One is a personal equation between two persons. Another is a judge, involvement of a judge. So when a judge is involved, I think media should come out of its shell and inform everybody, yes, the person who has to judge us, somebody has to judge him.
All right. This incident of violence that we saw, this pushing and shoving, is that now pretty much behind you, or is this something which you intend to take up further?
No, I don't think it is a major event. I don't think it's a major event. It is just a matter of a few advocates trying to blame the media for everything. But let me tell you, most of the advocates and most of the policemen are with the media because they are the one who are giving us the information.
Right. Okay, well, let's at least hope that the facts are there before the committee set up by the Chief Justice. Thank you all so much for joining us on the program. Mr. Balram, thank you so much for joining us from Bangalore.
Right. Well, still to come a little later in this program, Ajay Jadeja will be talking to us whether the new slam-bam version of cricket called Max Cricket is perhaps the future of the sport.
But before that, our focus on Gujarat and a special report from Godhra, which is in a sense come to symbolize these elections.
Your date at 8, tonight at 8, tomorrow night only on the Star News channel.
Welcome back. Let's take another look at some of the top headlines.